Jim is making his presentation.
All right. Well, welcome. Oh, sorry, Bob.
And well, I was just going to say the same thing you were, Jane. On behalf of myself and my two other committee members, Judith McDevitt and Jane Hastings, I want to welcome you all to this second Tuesday presentation. Jane is also co-president of our Oak Park River Forest League chapter. Before we get started, I want to make note of something that I think is very, very important. Today is the anniversary of Kristallnacht, which occurred, as you know, on November 9th, 1938, 83 years ago. In Germany, this is when the Nazis torched 200 plus synagogues, vandalized Jewish homes, schools, and businesses, killed close to 100 Jews. And afterwards, some 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sentenced to Nazi concentration camps. And that's when Nazis' policies towards Jews changed from harassment to violence. And we all know what followed after that.
This is adjusted for someone else.
You're doing great.
And Martin Niemöller, a prominent Lutheran pastor, said these words: "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." I'm sure you all are familiar with these words. And while this event occurred 83 years ago, unfortunately, we've had more such instances within the past few years. For example, in August of 2017, the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the marchers, the neo-Nazis, were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And then in October of 2018, in Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, where 11 people were killed. This kind of hate is always with us. And Jim, I think, will tell us how bad it can get when guns are involved. I just wanted to start by asking people to never forget events like this. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to Jane, who our co-president, who will introduce our speaker. Jane.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for that powerful reminder of the vicious power of violence, whether it's by gun or by something else. Well, welcome everyone. A few quick business rules. If you would mute yourself if you're not talking, that would be appreciated. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat room and we'll get to them at the end of it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Jim McGrath, who is a gun violence prevention specialist for the League of Women Voters of Illinois. He has a background, he's an engineering background from the U of I and a management master's degree from the Kellogg School at Northwestern. So that's an interesting background to end up in the gun violence prevention specialist. In 2014, on December 14, 2012, Sandy Hook occurred. And that's one of those things that we will all remember where we were and what happened. And for Jim, that really motivated him into some action on trying to prevent gun violence. And then on February 14th, 2018, what is there about the 14th of the month for these people? Parkland occurred. And so Jim was again just outraged as we all were, but it spurred him to action. And he helped organize Mothers Demand Action in in Barrington. And I'm sorry, after Sandy Hook, he had joined the Moms Demand Action in Vernon Hills because there was not a chapter in Barrington. But after Parkland, he helped establish a chapter for that in Barrington. And in 2018, he joined the League of Women Voters in Palatine. And in 2019, he became the gun violence prevention specialist for the state league. In addition to that, he's a precinct captain. He's an election judge. He's working on helping combating disinformation in school boards. He co-chairs the Northwest Suburban Organizer for Action, which is a get out the vote and fight for other democratic principles organization. And so Jim, thank you. We are honored to have you here. And I'm going to now turn the floor over to you.
Glad to be here. So let me start sharing my screen and we can get started. Okay, hopefully that's all up. So let's just start at the beginning. The Second Amendment, very short. That's all it says, well-regulated militia. But there's nothing in that amendment that supports an individual's ability to carry firearms for self-protection. If the founding fathers did not want to have a standing army, because where they came from, the standing armies were used against the people. So they did not want to have a standing army, but they wanted to have the people armed in case they needed to fight an enemy. So that's where the Second Amendment, that's the basis for the Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with self-protection. However, in 2008, this case, the District of Columbia versus Heller, the Supreme Court decided that the Second Amendment doesn't have to be connected to service in a militia. And in my opinion, that's where things started to go off the rails. Now, we have another case that the first hearing, the first oral arguments were last week, Wednesday. And this involves the state of New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. He's the chief of police for the New York State Police. But so they're suing him. What the issue is, the state of New York, in order to get a concealed carry permit, you have to have a reason that you want to carry. You have to have defending yourself for some clear and present danger. And these two people were denied. So they have now taken this all the way through all the courts to the Supreme Court, which is the goal. You'll see there's another case that I'm going to talk about. That's the goal, because the Supreme Court is now so biased, in my opinion, that court cases like this can now go to the Supreme Court and be decided in the conservatives' favor. So if this happens, we have a lot of concern about Illinois' concealed carry permit requirement. If this is decided in favor of these two plaintiffs. Now, this is a website that gunviolencearchive.org. This group updates these numbers daily. So I updated these numbers yesterday. Now remember, we're in so this is like the second week in November. So we still have another 7 weeks to go. We're already at 38,000 gun deaths for 2021. Homicides are 46%, suicides are 54%, and you can see the rest of these numbers here. However, one of the things that is different, Illinois, our suicide rate is only 39%, while the homicides are 58%. That doesn't mean that we have fewer suicides. It means we have more homicides. Now, if you go to this website, there is a map there that you can click on, and you can see all the locations in Illinois where gun violence has occurred. Now, mass shootings, something we all talk about. There's actually a definition for what is a mass shooting. It's defined as 4 or more people shot and killed, not including the shooter. One thing that's not considered when we talk about mass shootings is the cost. Not just the cost of people's lives and injuries and stuff, but the actual financial cost. The Las Vegas shooting is estimated to have cost more than $600 million when you tally the costs for medical, mental, police work, and all this. And then the fear of mass shootings. Now we are, all over the last 10 years, we've invested money since Columbine. I guess that's 20 years. But I mean, we've invested $800 million in federal dollars. Over 20 years, that is nothing. That is not much at all when you consider all 50 states. So in Illinois, this is a stat from a group called Every Stat. In Illinois, gun violence costs Illinois over $10 billion each year. Oh, 668 million is paid for by taxpayers. Now, there is a resolution, I don't know if you're aware of, the Illinois Association of School Boards has a meeting every year, and they evaluate different proposals from different school boards for different issues. One of the issues that's being raised by a Glen Ellen school district is to raise the age of that requires safe gun storage from 14 to 18. What the law says is, what today's law says, if someone under the age of 14 might gain access to your firearm, you have to lock it up. Well, 14. I mean, look at the chart. Now, you can see the current law covers only these to the left of this first vertical line. If we would raise the law to 18, it would cover the vast majority of school shooters. Now, unfortunately, the resolutions committee who puts these resolutions together has recommended that this resolution be opposed. That is not a good idea. And the reason is they don't think school boards should have any influence over what goes on in people's homes. The problem is unsecured guns end up at schools, and therefore they should be concerned. So if you haven't talked to your school board yet about this, please do. This is an online publication called Education Week. Schools can make it harder for students to act upon violence. I've talked with some officials at the various school districts, and they know who the problem kids are. The problem is they just don't have the resources and the people to help the kids. So what the thinking is, let's just put people in, let's just put a school resource officer in there with a gun, who, if the kid comes to school with a gun and starts shooting, we can shoot him. So, you know, when I talk to these people, wouldn't it be better if we could help them to become a productive person in our society, rather than planning to shoot them if they become a problem? So this is the next issue that is up for a resolution in the school boards, is arming of school teachers. And that's not school teachers, but for any school employee. So there was a survey taken that asking teachers, do you think that the schools would be safer if some of your fellow teachers were armed? 20% said yes. 22% said about as safe as now. 58% said less safe. And these are the people that are right, because time and again, we know more guns result in more shootings result in people being less safe. Arming teachers, mishandling guns. Here's an issue that, schools are a gun-free zone. Now, if you look at the law requires that if you have a gun in school, it has to be in a locked container, unloaded. But what this proposal from it's Mercer County, Illinois, the Mercer County School District, to arm school employees, they're proposing that if you have a concealed carry permit, you can do concealed carry on the school. My wife is a former teacher, and when I talked to her about this, her comment is, teachers forget. Now, if there's a teacher on the call, this is a teacher telling me this. Teachers forget where they put their coffee cup. I had another teacher tell me, teachers forget where they put their reading glasses. So in my opinion, let's not give them another issue to forget where they put it. An armed teacher in a moment of extreme duress and confusion cannot be expected to transform into a specially trained law enforcement. They're much more likely to shoot a student bystander or be shot. Now, my brother-in-law is a former policeman. He has a concealed carry permit, but he has said if something like this would happen, he would never pull his gun out and try to shoot the shooter, because he said law enforcement comes, they see me with a gun, they're going to think I'm the shooter, and that's what would happen in this school situation. Okay, smart investments can make safer schools. One of the things that, again, that I've talked about talking to various school boards is, let's not put your money into arming teachers or putting school resource officers in with guns. School resource officers can be a good thing, but they don't need a gun. If you're thinking you're putting the officer in there with a gun to prevent school shootings, that's misplaced. But what you can do is you can invest in like a secure entrance, which I talked to Palatine School District, I talked to Barrington School District a couple of years ago, and now they didn't stop their school resource officers, but what they did was they actually went and reinforced their entranceways with like electric doors that you have to call in to get a permission. Why are you here? Who do you want to see? Kind of a thing. So, and again, this is just another, arming educators with guns is not a viable strategy. School resource officers, again, this is just hiring school resource officers has been a big response. People think that's the right way to do it. There's no evidence that says that the presence of a school resource officer in schools has lessened the severity of any school shooting. This is from a group called Journal of Adolescent Health. So mass shootings, assault weapons. Vast majority of death by guns in the US is from handguns. However, mass shooters prefer assault weapons. California has had a ban on assault weapons for decades. However, this last summer, they were taken to court on it, and the court overturned the ruling. They appealed it. The appeal supported did not support the overturn. So the law was reinstated. So the plaintiff is taking it to the Supreme Court. Like I said earlier, that is the goal, to get these issues to the Supreme Court where they expect a favorable response. There are now, up until 2 weeks ago, this number here that I have shows 20 million assault weapons. I just updated it yesterday. There's 20 million assault weapons already in possession of US gun owners. So any ban on assault weapons right now would not impact this number unless there is a requirement to turn them in, which will probably never get passed. But one thing about the filibuster, you have to consider that that's a lethal weapon because it's actually preventing the debate on any common sense gun laws from the states on the Senate floor. So while we're talking about assault weapons, now these were banned, these are bump stocks, but I thought you might want to see what a bump stock is. So in this first picture, the actual mechanism of the rifle is on the right side here. The stock that came with the gun has already been removed, and what's being held up here is the bump stock. So once the bump stock is installed, you can see there's a gap between the body of the gun and this bump stock. So what happens when the weapon is fired, the recoil pushes the body of the gun into this open space. There's a mechanism in the bump stock that pushes the body back forward. Now, if you're holding the trigger down, what that does is essentially fires the gun again because you're holding the trigger down. So this is what makes this thing, turns it basically into a machine gun. Guns in the home. Again, this number, 5.4 million kids live in homes with unlocked and loaded guns. Up until about a year ago, that number was 4.6 million. It's now been updated because last year was a huge year for gun sales, and it has continued into this year. This was a study that was done recently by Lurie Children's Hospital just for gun owners in Chicago. Now, these are the people that actually reported, that actually were honest and said they had a gun in their home. So 22% of Chicago parents reported having a firearm in their home. Nearly half who own guns do not unload them before storing them. 89% of their firearms are stored and locked. So that says 11% of Chicago parents are storing their guns loaded and unlocked. Loaded and unlocked. So here is something that, you know, a gun costs a whole lot more than $62. So if you're going to buy a firearm, you should spend an extra $62. And this is a biometric safe that you get at Walmart. They are not expensive. You can also have a key lock on it, or you can use a gun lock. Here's some examples of gun locks. So this is a pistol with a gun lock on it, a rifle, another pistol with a gun lock on it, and all it is like a bike lock that goes through the mechanism to prevent it from being used. Suicide. That's the biggest issue, the big issue with guns in the homes. Suicide rates in this population are 4 times higher for kids who live in guns with homes. 40% of the suicides are committed by kids and teens with guns. The thing that 9 out of 10 of these suicides were victims accessed guns from their own home or the home of a relative. So that issue with gun storage that I talked about with the IASB is not only for school shooters, but it's for gun suicides. So we need to make sure people lock their guns up. Several states actually have a law that says anytime the gun is not in the possession of the owner, it has to be in a locked container. I wish Illinois would move to that, but you know, that's something that we have to work on. There's a myth that gun suicide is, you know, why are you worried about gun suicide? it's the same as, every other form of suicides, which is not true. This number, 82.5%, is the one thing that I got from the GVpedia site. I've seen this number actually as high as 90% fatality rate. However, with all other forms of suicide, it's only a 4% suicide. They're actually successful. 70% of suicide survivors never attempt suicide again. They're grateful to be alive. So guns, proliferation of guns in the US and around now, data is confusing. This National Shooting Sports Foundation is kind of like the NRA, only they do have some good things that we'll talk about a little bit later. But when they reported the number of guns sold in 2020, they reported that 20 million guns were sold. However, the real number is closer to 40 million guns, which is a 40% increase over 2019. Now, I said this trend to buy guns continued into 2021. In 2021, January, 4 million guns just in 1 month were sold. That's a 60% increase. Oh, this should be increase over 2020. I'm sorry, I'll have to fix that. Over 5 million people in 2020 were first-time gun buyers. Now, here's a problem that happened in 2020 in Illinois. Gun dealers were considered an essential business. So gun dealers were allowed to stay open and sell guns. But to train a person, a first-time gun buyer, you have to go to the shooting range. Shooting ranges were considered to be a sport, leisure. Shooting ranges had to be closed. So these gun dealers had to sell guns to people who wanted them, but they had no way to train them. So the people walked out with a gun with no training. Project Child Safe is something that we should all know about. Again, this is one of the good things that this National Shooting Sports Foundation does. They have kits that they will give out to local police forces that include gun locks. Your police, you can go to, just type in projectchildsafe.org, check to see if your local police force is signed up on this website. If they are, you will see that you will see the name of your village listed, and if you see your village listed, call your police department and ask them if they have gun locks available. I did that a couple of years ago in Barrington because Barrington was listed, and the person that answered the phone said, "Oh no, we don't do that anymore." And I said, "Well, why not?" She said, "It's too much of a problem." She said, "Matter of fact, I'm going to call them and get Barrington removed from that list." So I went to a village board meeting because I knew the chief of police went to village board meetings. And when he was walking out, I followed him and I asked him about the gun locks. And he did not know that they did not have gun locks anymore. His comment was, "We give them out at some of our tabling events." And I said, "Chief Dorn, you don't have gun locks anymore." So he was going to talk to the assistant and get them back signed up and get gun locks in, which they have done. So you can do this. The gun locks are free. There's no charge to your police department to do this. Now, here's the gun sales in 2020. I'm sorry, through May of this year. You can look at it. Illinois. I've highlighted Illinois in red so you can pick them out. Pick us out. Illinois had over 5 million guns sold in Illinois. You don't see anybody even close. Kentucky on this page is 1.3 million. You're not going to see anybody even close. I'll turn the page, get the rest of the states. Who do you see anybody on this page that's even close to 5 million guns? Now I'm trying to find out on I have to call the state police, which I haven't done yet. But a couple of years ago, one of the first things that JB did when he when he was inaugurated, he signed the Gun Dealer Certification Act, which gave the state police the authority to regulate Illinois gun dealers. Up until that time, any police officer in Illinois, state police, county police, local police, could not do anything about a gun dealer who might be selling guns illegally. Now, when we find guns at crime scenes and we can trace them back to a renegade gun dealer, the state police can now go in there and actually shut them down if we have to. So crime guns can recovered in 2019. I could not find any data for 2020. I don't know if it just hasn't been published yet, but so in Illinois, 5,700 guns were recovered from gun dealers in Illinois. These are crime guns that were recovered in Illinois that were sold by Illinois gun dealers. So we can do something about this now with this Gun Dealer Certification Act. We all complain about all the number of guns coming from Indiana. If you should be aware that the city of Chicago sued one of the Indiana gun dealers because they have traced over 850 guns, crime guns, to this one gun dealer. Over 850 guns. So think about that. Over 850 guns to one gun dealer. The total in 2019 was 1,800. And then after that, it falls off a lot. So one thing that I'd like to point out is when you're trying to solve a problem, you try to solve the biggest problem first. The biggest problem is our own gun dealers at 5,700. We need to do something about Indiana, like what Chicago is doing. But other than that, we can't do anything about gun dealers that are not in Illinois. So this Gun Dealer Certification Act is a big deal for Illinois. Ghost guns. If you've heard about ghost guns. Ghost gun is an unregistered, unregulated gun. It's made from parts. So if a gun is sold, if a gun is sold not as an assembled gun, but as a kit, it can be sold without being sealed, serialized, without having a serial number on the gun. So it can't be traced. It can't be registered. It's not registered. The owner doesn't have to register it because nobody knows that they have it. Felons and domestic abusers can purchase these kits online. It's illegal, but since it's not registered, nobody knows that they actually have it. Ghost guns are not illegal in any state. The ATF held a forum earlier this year. It was like in July, about updating the requirements on ghost guns, hopefully to start regulating them and requiring them to be serialized and registered just like any other gun. So in between 2016 and 2020, over 23,000 unserialized firearms were recovered by law enforcement, according to the ATF. 23,000 unserialized guns, and it's getting worse. So when I first started looking into ghost guns, I thought they were just handguns. These are ghost guns recovered in San Francisco in 2019. These are all assault weapons. Ghost gun assault weapons. Now that to me is more scary than anything. This is nonsense. Okay, here's another issue. You cannot sue a gun manufacturer or a dealer. What I've bolded down here, firearms are the only consumer product where the manufacturer is not held responsible for death or injury caused by their product. The only consumer product. There's this law called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Action or in Act, Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. However, some of the law enforcement, some of the attorney generals are trying to get creative. And the New Jersey Attorney General has sued Smith & Wesson for deceptive advertising. In other words, if you have a gun, you can be safer, which we know is not true. If you have a gun, you're more likely to be shot or shoot somebody. So the New Jersey Supreme Court upheld the Attorney General's subpoena for discovery, so the case is moving forward. Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Connecticut are moving forward with similar cases. Interesting stat, yard darts were outlawed after one death. Yard darts were outlawed after one death, but we can't do the same with firearms. The Trace, this is a daily publication that comes out. Anybody can sign up for it. But this is some data that was in their August 6th publication, that in Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois, we spend $4.5 billion on policing and incarceration because of guns. Of that, only 2.8% were earmarked for violence prevention. So in other words, we think it's more important to incarcerate than prevent. The war on crime has been in effect for decades. We've been trying to arrest our way out of the gun violence problem for years. It clearly hasn't worked. This is something that I'm kind of torn on, because one of the things that we thought would deter a lot of this was to make crimes committed with a gun, if you're convicted, you get a harsher sentence. Well, the person with the gun isn't thinking about that when they commit the crime with the gun. So that really hasn't worked. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about some of what happened in Springfield this year. There were over 100 gun bills proposed in Springfield. I put a spreadsheet together of just the bills proposed in the House. Majority of these bills were proposed by gun rights legislators. I would say probably 60% of the bills proposed. Here's just a smattering of some of the issues that they were proposing. They want to repeal the Floyd, the firearms owner identification requirement. There were several bills proposed to do this. They want to allow adults living in a child care home. A child care home is a home where someone there is doing child care for multiple kids from not just their own home, but from outside the home. They want to fund armed security at schools and to train teachers who obtain concealed carry permits. They want to fund this. I mean, that's our taxpayer money. They want to legalize silencers in a bill called Wildlife and Crime. So buried in this wildlife bill, which went to the Wildlife and Fish and Game Committee, but buried in that bill was a requirement that legalized silencers. This didn't go anywhere, but this is if you don't follow this stuff, this is what they're doing. They're trying to sneak this stuff in. They want to repeal the Gun Dealer Certification Act. Again, that was the first thing that JB signed when right after he was inaugurated. And they want to allow judges to carry carry guns if they have a concealed carry permit in areas not provided by or prohibited by the federal government. These bills never got out of committee, which is good. There were some good bills too. Unfortunately, many have got no attention. There's several safe storage of firearms proposed. This was proposed by Kathy Willis. there was no action on this bill. Again, it never got out of committee, but I had tried to call Kathy Willis on this because this bill included only up to age 14, and it should be up to age 18. This was passed, appropriate $150,000 to fund the Department of Health to implement the Firearm Violence Prevention and Reduction Study Act. We're finally going to study this gun violence in the state of Illinois. They wanted to reduce the sales tax for gun safes and gun locks to 1%, which is a good thing. That was trying to encourage gun owners to buy gun safes and gun locks. They got no action. Now, I've been on some calls with the Moms Demand Action or Everytown group, where they have gun owners who are part of the call, and every one of these gun owners supports locking your gun up, unload it, lock it, and before you store it. So most gun owners support these kind of actions. It's just that there's a small group that gets more visibility that creates the problem. The bio bill, I'm going to skip down here. Bio bill, it passed in the House, it failed in the Senate. We could not get 30 votes. The Firearms Restraining Order update was passed in both chambers, and it became law. There was a compromise bio bill, which is fix the Floyd, that was passed by both chambers. So, I kind of went through this already. One of the reasons that we couldn't get 30 votes in the Senate is because many of the downstate senators would not support fingerprinting. So I went out to different areas. Wanted to find out, okay, so I went to Decatur. I searched for information. Here's the police chief. He wants action. In these articles, he is criticizing the state legislature for not taking enough action on guns, on regulating guns. The police chief, Peoria, vicious pattern of gun violence, Rockford, Carbondale, Champaign. There's a problem in Champaign that I talked to a couple of people weekly in Champaign, and they admit they have a gun problem in Champaign. Now, you don't hear about it because it's a smaller population, but as far as you look at the gun violence per capita, it's still a bad situation. So this is the Floyd compromise bill. The good things are it expands background checks, something we've been wanting to get forever. Even private sales on gun sales has to go through a background check. So if I'm trying to sell a gun to you, I have to get your information. I have to do a background check on you, and I have to get approval to sell you that gun through this background check. It implements a voluntary fingerprinting database. What I have found is that a lot of the gun owners have already submitted their fingerprints on a voluntary basis. It gets them, there's a benefit. I think they get automatic renewal of their Floyd card if they submit their fingerprints. It requires record keeping by all federally firearms licensees, which are gun dealers. Now, just FYI, a gun dealer does not have to have a storefront. The majority of gun dealers in Illinois operate out of their home. So that's almost to me like a private sale, but they operate out of their home. But they have to now keep a record. They have to take the record of that sale to a federally licensed gun dealer. And that gun dealer has to record that sale in their database. That gun dealer can charge the person $25, up to $25 for that, accepting that record. Requires the state police, I'm sorry, I skipped over this, $9 million to fund mental health and trauma support for concealed carry from the concealed carry license fee fund. People have been paying into this fund. It's just been sitting there for years. The concealed carry license fund is sitting there, not being used. It's now $9 million, and that's in that fund, have to go to this, have to go to mental health and trauma support. It requires the state police to remove guns from people with revoked Floyd cards. A few years ago, the Chicago Tribune put a little website together where you could go in and click on your community and find out how many Floyd cards had been revoked in your community, the top 3 regions they had been revoked, and for how many had actually turned in their guns. So up until this law was passed, what would happen is the state police, when a Floyd card was revoked, the state police would write that person a letter saying, please turn in your weapons and your Floyd card. Well, most of them never did, and there was absolutely no follow-up. So people kept their weapons in their Floyd cards. Creates a stolen gun database, creates a prohibited persons portal. People who have their Floyd cards revoked or suspended are in this. So if somebody's doing a background check, and they could actually do this first, just find out. JB signed this into law in August. The chief of police of Aurora, regarding the shooting that happened at the Henry Pratt manufacturing company a couple of years ago, that shooter should not have had the gun. If I'll just, the quick story there is, he was a convicted felon in a different state. He moved to Illinois. To get a Floyd card, you can go online, download the form, fill it out, write a check for $10, mail it to the state police, and you get your Floyd card. And that's it. The state police will do a quick check, but without fingerprints, they can't check everything. So when he decided that he wanted a concealed carry permit, to get the concealed carry permit, you have to turn in your Floyd card. I'm sorry, you have to turn in fingerprints. When he turned in fingerprints, they found that he was a convicted felon and revoked his Floyd card, wrote him a letter. He didn't turn his weapon in, and so he still had his Floyd card. When he got fired, he went back to the Henry Pratt company and shot 4 or 5 of his former co-workers. He should never have had that gun. Violence against women. I'm sure you are aware that this is the big problem with gun violence in the U.S. It's linked to millions of women and families and communities across the country. Abusers with firearms are 5 times more likely to kill their victims. An average of 57 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner every month. The 1 million women alive today have reported being shot or shot at by their partners, and 4.5 million women have reported being threatened by a gun with an intimate partner. Another reason that guns have to be controlled. So this is from Everytown. 2 things that we can do to strengthen gun violence against women. Strengthen the state laws prohibiting domestic abusers from possessing guns and requiring abusers to relinquish the guns they already have. So Illinois is actually pretty good about this. Now that we have this gun dealer certification and this new law that was just passed requiring the Illinois State Police to actually go to a person's house and remove guns if their Floyd card has been revoked. So that's this bottom bullet down here. The update to the Firearms Restraining Order, which is FRO, Firearms Restraining Order, which was passed in 2018. Interestingly enough, Rauner was still governor, he signed that bill into law because it was passed in both houses with veto-proof majorities. So he had no choice to sign it. Otherwise, he would have been embarrassed with veto overrides. So it expands a class of people who will be able to petition police or the courts. What had happened was they didn't have in the original FRO bill or FRO law, they didn't have a good definition of what a family member was. For example, if a man and a woman have a child, but were never married and never living in the same house, are they or were they a family? Well, that was not defined. So now they are considered, for example, if a woman is concerned about the father who may have a gun becoming a problem, she can now petition to have his firearms removed temporarily. It's either 2 weeks which is an emergency removal, or 6 months, and you can get a extension on the 6 months. It was we added that the ammunition and gun parts to build a weapon now also have to be removed. Requires the Illinois Department of Public Health to create a program for public awareness of FRO. When this bill was signed into law in 2018, there was no state program to make people aware of this. So the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition in Chicago created a group called Speak for Safety, hired 2 people, one in the metro area, one downstate, who were tasked with creating presentations to inform people about these laws. I was trying to get local police forces in the area here, so I went to Palatine and talked with one of the officers there, and he kept saying, "Well, this would be great," but he didn't want us to come in with Speak for Safety. He wanted the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Board to create a program to inform the officers, which now this bill requires. So, yeah, these other 2 bullets are nice to have. So here's from this is from Cook County. You can go to the Cook County Sheriff's Office .org, cookcountysheriff.org, and here's all the steps that you can go through to get a firearms restraining petition filed. Again, like I said, there's 2 types. There's an emergency FRO and a 6-month FRO. You have to fill a form out. If you're interested in any of that, if you know somebody, and this is not just somebody that's going to hurt you. If you're concerned that they have a gun and they may hurt themselves, you can do a FRO on them. But you have to be a family member. You can't be a neighbor, which is unfortunate. But because the concern was neighbors might get file things in. This is something that I was not aware of, but this is a good thing. This was passed. They cannot have a active shooter school drill where they run around the school shooting blanks, pounding on doors when the kids are present. Can't do that anymore because of the trauma that it would causing students. So what can we do coming up? As I mentioned before, we had safe storage gun bills proposed, but we got no traction. So I'm hoping that the attorney that wrote the FRO update has said he might have time to rewrite write another bill for safe gun storage. So I'm trying to, I ping him every couple of weeks to ask him how things are going, because I want to see something proposed for next year. I want to see this in the list of things to do in the agenda of gun bills for next year. So in conclusion, for all league members, I will do this presentation for any group. If you have a church group, if you have a Rotary group who might be interested in this, the other thing you can do is schedule a Be Smart gun safety presentation with your local Moms Demand Action group. They will do that. Every group has or can get somebody that will do this presentation. And what this presentation does is it's about safe gun storage. And it says it's not the responsibility of the child. You can't teach a kid not to touch the gun. You can try, but it's a responsibility of the adults in the house to make sure the gun is safely stored. The other thing that I ask is you can ask your local members to join the League of Women Voters GVP Google email group. So I use it to send occasional informational emails about relevant gun issues. But most importantly, I use it to send a request for witness slips, because our time for actions can take weeks for approval. And we generally have less than 24 hours, as you probably know, to act on a witness slip. So if you want to join this, if you're not already in this GVP Google group, here's my email address. Send me an email, put GVP Google group as a subject so I can find it, and we'll get you added to that Google list. It's very helpful. And what's nice is people save that, and they find out about something and they'll email me back, which is great. I love it. I try to keep track of as much as I can. I can't keep track of everything. So I need anybody who finds information out, and don't hesitate. If you think I might already know about it, think I don't know about it, and send it to me. If I know about it, that's great, but I probably don't. So that's the end of my presentation. I appreciate any questions.
Wow. I've got one. Jim, I don't know. Do you have any insight into why Illinois purchases so many damn guns in a year?
No.
I mean, that is so far beyond any other state in the nation.
Yes. Yeah. No. I wish I could put some logic to it. There's nothing that I can point to.
I mean, we don't know if that's like a gang related or.
No, these are guns that were actually purchased through gun dealers in Illinois.
Wow. Okay. Ed McDevitt has a raised hand. Where's Ed?
Hi, Jim. I'm just, you just found out, I'm Ed McDevitt. I'm a member of a small group in Oak Park and River Forest called Gun Responsibility Advocates.
Yep.
But before I get to that, I just want to make a quick comment about that. I just want to ask you a question. You said there's a list of municipalities that have gun logs that they give away. Where do I find that list?
You have to go to that projectchildsafe.org.
Project Child Safe?
Projectchildsafe.org. And you have to do a couple of clicks, but you can drill down and find out who has, where to get the gun lots from.
Okay, what I wanted to, a couple of things. One of the reasons the FRO failed, or it didn't fail, one of the reasons it wasn't effective, we discovered in connection with some other members of what was then known as a smaller organization called the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. We found out the police departments didn't even know about it. They were unaware of it. At the time, local police departments were charged with picking up guns with people who had restraining orders against them. So, and they were unaware of it. We made Oak Park aware of it. They did not know it before we made them aware of it. With respect to fingerprinting, there were two main proponents of that we were very confident in. One was Denise Wang Stonebeck, who was the representative from the 16th district. She continued, despite the fact this is pretty ugly. She was being quite obviously threatened. Her life was being threatened, as were the lives of her kids, because gun owners were threatening her because she was pushing so hard on fingerprinting. But the two main people were Don Harmon and Denise Stonebeck. Don in the Senate, Denise in the 16th district in the House. When Don Harmon ceased being a proponent because he became president of the Senate, so he really couldn't be an open proponent of things. At least that's what he said. However, I believe that I believe that Don Harmon could be pressured to bring this whole thing back again with respect to fingerprinting. And I believe it's a good idea if you know him, or even if you don't, to be in touch with him and say, we really support fingerprinting.
Yeah, and then just last week I did a presentation for the Winnetka League, and they had Ram Villavalam.
He's terrific.
He's terrific. I asked him about bringing the fingerprinting requirement back. He said, we have to wait a year. Give it a year. We'll bring it back in 2023.
We've heard that too.
So I understand his reasoning behind that. So we have to sit tight for a year.
Just quickly, one of the things that Gun Responsibility Advocates was successful at, even though we're a tiny little group, we got a resolutions supporting universal background checks from Oak Park, River Forest, Maywood, and actually from the entire Cook County Board, which sponsored something we brought to them, and they voted it as a resolution supporting universal background checks. So that was exciting. One thing we discovered that we think would be very effective with respect to restraining orders and making people aware that guns can be removed from homes is to let to bring to hospital emergency rooms and physicians the information that if somebody is feeling threatened, they can request that guns be removed from their home or from the vicinity. Because most hospitals and doctors do not know about the firearm restraining order.
I agree.
So that's what I had to say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for that update.
Not yesterday's WIP, but last week's, I think it was November 1st. There was the time for action in there, which asked folks to contact your school boards to
Yes.
vote no and yes on the respective resolutions that Jim mentioned. So if you don't have that, I'd be happy to send that back out to you. It was off of the state league site. I think it was an October time for action. And there is a sample script in there that you can send to your school boards supporting safe firearm storage and opposing armed teachers in the schools.
Yeah, Jane, I had supplied some backup information with that TFA before it got sent out. Unfortunately, the backup information did not get sent out with the TFA. So I can send that to you if you want to send it out to your members.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Jane, I talked to Sarah Spivey at District 200, and she said it was going to be discussed last Thursday. Does anybody know whether they got to it or acted on it already?
I do not.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
That was, which district was that in?
That
200?
was 200, yeah.
Because there's between the three towns, including Forest Park, we have five or six school districts.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting when I talked to the Winnetka League last week about these. They said they had contacted their school board, and their school board had said that they were not going to send anybody to the convention. In other words, they weren't going to have a vote.
Wow.
So they were going to go back to their school board and insist that somebody attend the meeting and vote no and vote yes.
This is similar to what we did a couple years ago. Remember Beverly Graham? What, and I think that was out of Mercer County too. It was the same,
Yes. And
same
Mercer County
issue.
has made the same proposal like 3 or 4 years in a row. It
And
gets voted down every year.
Judith, I think you went, and Beverly, maybe you went, but you went and read our statement, the local league statement into the meeting record of opposition.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. It was at a village board meeting.
Yeah, we did. I think, yeah, we did Oak Park and River Forest. You know what? I have just a question out of curiosity, Jim, and I don't know if you know this. You were talking about the number of automatic weapons, assault weapons, which are just so terrifying. And you said there were like, what, 20 million, you think, that they
20 million,
estimate?
yeah.
Do you have, is there any sense how many individual owners that represents? Are there 20 million owners, or are there 1 million crazy coops with 25 guns each?
That's a great question. No, I don't. I'll tell you what,
Okay.
I'll see if I can find that out.
I'm
That's a
just
great
curious.
question.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you come across it, it's, one for everybody, or is somebody planning on, having a standout in the Boot Hill down in Missouri somewhere?
Yeah, I was doing a tabling event and a couple of years ago, and a gun owner came up and started talking about assault weapons. And he said, well, he has one and he uses it to hunt. I go,
Oh,
you
for
gotta be
God's
kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. And he goes, yeah, he goes, I go to Texas. The guy must have had a lot of money. He goes, we get a helicopter and we go and shoot wild boar out
Oh.
of the helicopter.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if you've seen those demonstrations on television, the difference between what a assault weapon does to something that it hits. It actually destroys it. I mean, you like a regular, like a 45 or whatever, has an entrance and an exit wound. The assault weapon has an entrance hole and a huge exit. It blows everything out. It was meant to kill. That's the only point of an assault weapon. It's meant to kill.
Yeah. I mean, I know hunters and new hunters growing up. And the whole point of getting a clean shot was that you didn't have buckshot everywhere,
Yeah,
which would be antithetical to an automatic weapon.
yeah.
Yep, there's somebody in the chat room. Okay, Jones is having. Are there any more questions for Jim? Well, gosh, Jim, that was really just fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. A couple quick things. The next second Tuesday is going to be January the 11th. And we have not nailed down our speakers, but I think our topic is going to be reaching out to some, just to the collaboration on youth in Oak Park, and then perhaps a mental health provider to try to get a feel for, how did the pandemic impact kids? Scholastically, emotionally, and so forth. So that's going to be the topic we're shooting for in January.
I did have one final comment. It has to do with Veterans Day, which is just 2 days from today. I'm a retired clinical psychologist, and I spent most of my career at Hines VA Hospital and working with Vietnam vets. If you know a veteran, if you are a veteran, thank you for your service. And if you know one or happen to run into one, please thank him or her for their service. There's a very good series on Channel 11 right now called American Veteran. Tammy Duckworth has shared some of her experiences on this show. And, just like we shouldn't forget about Kristallnacht, we shouldn't forget the service of our veterans. something to think about. Thank you.
Michelle Fitzhenry is a veteran. If anybody wants to give
Oh, yeah.
on Veterans Day.
That's a nice thought, Bev. Yeah, good point. Good reminder, Bob.
One of our vice presidents, Jim.
Nice.
Yeah, yes, she was. All right, well, with that, everyone, take care. Enjoy your Thanksgiving celebration and hope to see you in 2023, if not before.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
you.
thank you.